I want to play something from a podcast that I did on Friday, and we didn't really have time to promote. And I want you to watch or listen to the podcast. You can find it on YouTube, or you can find it at Blaze TV. It's part of the subscription, and it is really, really good. We put it up on YouTube, on my YouTube page, because you really need to hear this. It's 35 minutes, but I'm telling you, it'll be the best 35 minutes you will spend probably all week. It is a professor of psychology, and he was going through COVID, and he realized that he's from Europe. He realized that what countries were doing didn't make any sense. You know, he said everybody in Sweden was going to die because Sweden wouldn't go along with the rest of the world. And he said, and when that didn't happen, you would expect people to go, oh, look, what's Sweden doing? It doesn't really make a difference. And he said when they didn't do that, and then the mask thing, and then let's just try an experimental drug without telling anybody anything about it, he said, I realized we were in a different place as a world. So he started doing research, and it took him back really to authoritarianism, which he says is very different because that is something that the mass participates in. For instance, Germans weren't being held by a dictator. They were being held by an ideology, an idea that was running through Hitler. Listen to what he says here.
When you're anxious and you don't know what you feel anxious for, you feel completely out of control. But if you start to believe that your anxiety is caused by something, no matter whether it is true or not, and that there is a strategy to deal with that something, then you have an experience of control. You feel in control again. And also, you have an object to direct all your frustration and aggression on. So that's the first psychological advantage, the first step of mass formation, with the first psychological advantage of mass formation. And in a second step, something even more important happens. Because so many people participate in a strategy, for instance, the lockdowns, but it could also be the concentration camps or the crusades or the witch. Because so many people participate in the strategy to deal with the object of anxiety. They have the feeling to fight a collective, heroic battle with the object of anxiety. And they feel connected again. The loneliness disappears. And they have a feeling of a new sense-making again. You could say, of course, what's the problem? People felt lonely, and now they feel connected again.
Right.
They were confronted with a lack of meaning-making, and now they have the feeling that their life makes sense again. And they felt out of control about their anxiety, and now they feel in control again. So what's the problem? Well, there is a problem. First, there always has to be a scapegoat at whom all this frustration and aggression can be directed. And also, even more important, this new social bond, this new connectedness, is not a social bond between individuals. It's always a social bond between the individual, between each individual separately and the collective. Meaning that in a mass, the famous citizenship, the famous solidarity that is so typical for mass formation, is never a solidarity between individuals. It's always a solidarity between the individual and the collective. Meaning that, and it is even the case, that the longer the mass formation lasts, the more all solidarity and love is sucked away from the bonds between the individuals and injected in the bond between the individual and the collective. And that makes that, in the end, solidarity with the collective is much bigger than a solidarity with other individuals, leading to the famous paranoid state in totalitarian systems, where every individual is willing to snitch on every other individual,
right,
to report every other individual to the state if they have the feeling that this other individual doesn't show enough solidarity to the collective. In the end, this leads typically, I've been talking with this woman, Shoreh Fishtari, who lived in Iran during the revolution there, which was a huge-scale process of mass formation. And she told me how she has seen how a mother reported her son to the state, and how this mother hung the noose around his neck when he was on the scaffold. And when he was hung, she claimed to be a heroine for doing what she did. That is a dramatic end stage of mass formation. That's what we have to avoid, that it goes to this end stage.
So,
what a brilliant explanation.
He is under attack.
Wow. Oh, I bet.
All of the elites are saying this guy's a right-wing enabler. He's not right. He's not right wing. I've read the book. You should read the book. It's called The Psychology of Totalitarianism. It is right on the money. And it is why I have said to you for a long time, if we go dark, evil doesn't destroy things. It perverts things and twists things. Look at what's happened to the word equality. Equality has been perverted. Freedom of speech is perverted.
Tolerance,
all of it is perverted. They don't destroy it, they pervert it. So what do you think is going to happen to us with all of our technology, all of the weapons alone that we have? We will become the darkest country to ever be on the face of the earth. We will go from the greatest country to the most terrifying country. Mark my words, it will happen, because we're already starting to see signs. We're starting to see signs of doctors saying, if you didn't get the COVID-19, why should I even treat you? Why should I even treat you for anything? I saw an op-ed it was a Medium post of a doctor in Los Angeles that said, this person I was working on hated black people. And, I'm anti-racist. Do I have to help him? Am I required to help him? Yes.
according to the oath you took.
Right.
Absolutely.
You are.
Yeah.
So when doctors and nurses are starting to say this, and you're also hearing this, let me just give you the FBI story. So the FBI, we know, has now deemed parents who speak up against their kids being, forced to go to a transgender show or reading books that are wholly inappropriate or having pedophilia normalized or have them question their gender. All of those we knew were bad 5 years ago. 5 years ago, we knew all of those things were bad. We didn't even have to say it because everybody knew it. So today, it's fine. And the FBI, forget about Washington. I'm talking about the local FBI, the one that is in your state or your city. They are now being called upon to investigate parents who stand up against this. Or they're going after and busting with handcuffs 84-year-old people. The latest bust happened last week. The pro-life father of 11 children. This is not the one you heard at the beginning of the week. This one happened on Wednesday. Federal Bureau of Investigation arrested a pro-life father of 11, charging him with conspiracy. Who's the conspiracy theorist? Conspiracy against rights secured by the FACE Act and committing FACE Act violations. Remind me, Sarah, I got to come back to the word conspiracy and how they're using it here. He said, when I opened the door and saw the guns pointed at me, they had long rifles. I asked them what they wanted. They said what they were looking for, and what they said they wanted was me. I had kids in the yard walking out to get in the car to go to school. I was about to take them to school. The other kids were in the house. So seeing that the easiest path to de-escalation was me in handcuffs, I stepped outside and put an end to the ranting and the banging and the yelling. After the FBI put him in handcuffs in the car, he said his wife came outside. She had been in the back of the house with their 18-month-old baby. She said, I want to know why you were banging on my door with a gun, she said. You're not going to tell me anything? The agent replied, and I've heard the tape. No, we're not. And she said, you're not going to tell me. And then he said, I tried. She said, no, you didn't. And he said, and he just got in the car. She talked to all the agents. None of them would even answer her. It was really horrible. Horrible. Now, here's the interesting thing. 11 of the advocates, they were pro-life advocates. They were charged with a violation of Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, for blocking an abortion clinic in 2021. So this is not a new thing. By the way, nobody contacted him. No lawyer contacted him. It took him hours to get a lawyer and a lawyer to figure out what the heck was going on. After he was charged, he was just let go. He didn't have a cell phone. He didn't have a wallet. He was in a T-shirt and pair of pants, and he was 60 miles away from his home. He said, what I told the agents that arrested me on the ride into town, since we had a nice hour of fellowship, is that this is a beautiful tactic. If you want to suppress free speech and you want to strike fear and intimidation into opposition, you weaponize justice to go after someone to suppress. If you can get a large family like mine, you also get all the children, because all the children will have a memory of growing up, the big bad agents banging on the door and taking away their dad. I think just the opposite, quite honestly. I think the opposite is true. I think the family and the children grow up thinking bad things about the government. Now, he has gone into more details about what was happening. He said his wife was still shaking and fighting back tears as he was being carted off. The family didn't receive any official information about the cause of the raid or Vaughn's whereabouts until 6 hours after the arrest. He was held in a federal holding facility and brought before a judge, charged, and then released without a wallet or cell phone. For over 6 hours, no one knew where I was and why I was kidnapped from my home at gunpoint. It took a good attorney 6 hours to be able to break through the bureaucracy and find somebody who knew what was going on. Vaughn pled not guilty to the charges and promised to fight the legal battle to the fullest. In a statement to Town Hall, Vaughn called the FBI paid thugs out of an out-of-control Justice Department that must be reined in immediately. Now, if this isn't bad enough...
And it is.
If this isn't bad enough, Vaughn wasn't even at the sit-in. He wasn't even there. This will blow your mind. I'll tell you what his participation was in 60 seconds. So this guy and 10 others were arrested for a sit-in. A sit-in. March 2021. Did you know that you could protest and be in a sit-in that's happened all through the 60s, and you could get 11 years in prison now? 11 years. Vaughn, the guy I just told you about, he didn't even participate in the sit-in. So what was his role? He acted as a mediator between the pro-life people who participated and law enforcement locally to ensure the protest was safe, peaceful, and as legal as possible. That's why it was coordinated, as these things always are. It was coordinated. He had called the local police and said, hey, look, we're going to do a sit-in on this day. What do we need to do to make sure that we're as legal as possible? And they said, well, you have to do this, this, and this. And it would be a misdemeanor. So we will take you away, but you'll be charged with a misdemeanor. Okay, great. So he's the guy that mediated with the local police. They all got misdemeanors, which was 100% appropriate. And what happens? The Justice Department gets wind of yet another local misdemeanor and decides to make it a felony. This is out of control. Now, let me bring it back to the psychology of totalitarianism. If this was happening to any protester that was peacefully protesting, would you be for 11 years in prison and the FBI not giving them a chance to surrender? Now, Antifa, I'm all for it. I'm talking about somebody who has called the local cops, doesn't want to, burn anything down. They're totally cool. They're in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And maybe they have their grandchildren with them. And they've done all of that. Do you want the FBI involved in this? I don't.
I'm wondering how they even were. What was this that makes it? Oh, the act is probably federal.
It's federal, and
right, the FACE Act.
Yeah, and they're making this. You're not supposed to be able to stop someone from going into an abortion clinic.
Right.
Well, the last week it wasn't. The hallway was clear. Person could come in. They were singing and praying.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what they were doing. This sit-in, I'm assuming they're doing the same thing. I don't know if they actually blocked the door, but that is federal. But is this justice in America? You already have half the population remaining silent on the abuse from the FBI, remaining silent on all of the stuff that has gone on, and is actually sitting there and remaining silent when a president of the United States says, you know, anybody who voted for Trump, 90 million people, they're all terrorists.